Get some! America. So it is actually a lovely day because we actually have good news today. What is going on? Several days recently where we have had good news.
Is justice coming?
It kind of feels like it. I mean, that's why we have the Tumblr that says justice is coming. Not that you can see that writing, but anyways, all right, guys. Biden does something really positive. What is this? Trump gets arrested for the 88th time. We should have mugshots for you guys later in the program because he might be having his picture taken right now. That's fun for everybody. And then later, should we crack eggs on our kids' heads?
No, we cut that story.
We cut it?
Yeah.
Oh, that was good. I had fun with that story.
Let me just say, if you're a parent and you're cracking eggs on your children's heads for attention, just don't do that. It's bad. It's not good, it's bad.
Don't, just don't. All right, so, and by the way, we covered the debate last night. If you're a member, good news. You can get it anytime you want, tyt.com/join. Go nuts in the member section. You get all of our content. But we're gonna discuss who the media thought won and who actually won as well. All right, Casper, take it away.
Well, even though Trump hasn't been booked quite yet, I do think that there are some stories surrounding that whole situation that are worth getting into, beginning with this. Former President Donald Trump is turning himself in at the Fulton County, Georgia jail today after getting indicted, of course, by District Attorney Fani Willis for his role in attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election. He's facing 13 felony counts for his role in doing so. And just before turning himself in, Trump decided to shake up his Georgia legal defense team, which I think is a really fascinating story here. So he added a veteran criminal defense lawyer by the name of Steve Sadow to the team, and Sadow filed a document indicating that he is in fact the lead counsel of record for Donald Trump. Now, he also worked on many high-profile cases pertaining to rappers like Usher. You also have Rick Ross, T.I. He's celebrated as one of the top defense attorneys in the state. Now, Trump's decision comes soon after one of his lawyers, Drew Findling, and his two other lawyers in the Georgia case, Jennifer Little and Marissa Goldberg, negotiated a $200,000 bond for Trump. Findling is expected to be let go, according to a person familiar with the matter, while Little will be retained. There were some reports after this was reported that the way Findling was doing, the job was not the reason for letting Findling go, but I don't really know why the switch up happened if that's the case. But nonetheless, Trump has been inquiring for several days about who else could be brought in for his legal defense team. And that's according to a person familiar with the discussions. Trump's main concern, according to this person, was that he wanted a more sophisticated team. So Sadow said in a statement that Trump should never have been indicted, adding he is innocent of all the charges brought against him. Prosecutions intend to advance or serve the ambitions and careers of political opponents of the president, have no place in our justice system, alluding to the notion that this is a political prosecution rather than a prosecution with evidence indicating that Trump attempted to overturn the election. Obviously, I disagree with that take. Now, there are other elements of this story worth getting into, including the attempts to move the trial from the state courts to the federal courts. We can get into that. And the disconnect between one of Trump's co-conspirators wanting a speedy trial and Trump's legal team not wanting a speedy trial. We'll get into that as well. But first, Cenk, what do you think about this legal team, defense team switch up?
Yeah, so there's two things here. So number one, Trump changes lawyers more than almost anyone I've ever seen, and this is well documented. And there is a reason for that, because he has unreasonable demands. He will tell a lawyer, okay, go lie on my behalf on television. And the lawyer will be like, I can't do that. Go lie in court. Well, I can't do that. Okay, you're fired. And he thinks, well, look, if you guys can get mobsters off, you can get all these guys off, why can't you get me off? And they're definitely guilty, and I'm definitely guilty. A good lawyer would figure out how to get me off, go on television, convince the whole country that I didn't do it when I obviously did it. Yeah, but by the way, the mob family actually tried to cover up their crimes. You didn't even do that, brother. They ran a criminal enterprise, so they had to do some management. So the guys at the top were relatively smart. You, on the other hand, are a knucklehead who's like, hey, you want to know top secret documents? I got them right here. Hey, Mark Meadows' biographer, you want to see them? Here it is, our war plans on Iran. So mob guys are a little bit more careful than that. So this Sato guy, he's also represented others, including Gunna and YSL, which of course you know, Young Slime Life. Now he's representing Old Slime Life. So it's a nice little combo there. And the Gambino family. So he's right at home now with the Trump crime family.
Sounds quite experienced. Now he was not a Trump fan. In fact, some of his previous social media posts indicated that he was very much not a fan of Donald Trump's, but he was willing to represent Trump in this legal battle in Georgia having to do with the election meddling. Now let's get to some interesting developments, especially when it comes to whether or not there will be a speedy trial, because there is an individual who's calling for a speedy trial, but Trump ain't into it, okay? Now, as I shared with you all recently, there are 3 defendants that are seeking to remove their cases and instead have them heard in federal court. And that includes Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff, Jeffrey Clark, a former Justice Department official, and also David Schaefer, a former head of the Georgia Republican Party. Now, Jeffrey Clark, the former DOJ official, is the individual who is calling for a speedy trial, and Trump is not having it. But Fani Willis is willing to get started pretty soon, actually. So let's get to those details. Apologies, it's actually Kenneth Chesebro who wants the speedy trial, not Jeffrey Clark.
Can I just say, yeah, I was gonna correct that, but Chesebro is like the funnest name in the world, because it reminds me of Wagner from Heat. And because it's like, hey, what are you doing, cheese bro? Why are you trying to move up the trial date?
It just makes me think of someone who's a big fan of cheese. Like, he's a cheese bro. He's a cheese connoisseur. He has a business called the Cheese Bros.
There's no way he does. If he doesn't have that business, as soon as he gets out of jail, he should start that business up. And I always think he's a Packers fan. Anyways, but it is super relevant that he wants that date moved up. We'll talk about it.
Yes, okay, so again, I want to correct myself. It is Kenneth Chesebro who wants the speedy trial. He made the demand on Wednesday of this week, and which under Georgia law would require the trial for all 19 of the defendants to begin as soon as possible. He called for it to begin on November 3rd, months earlier than the prosecutors had sought. So Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis filed a motion Thursday suggesting an October 23rd trial date for former President Donald Trump and his 18 co-conspirators in response to the motion filed Wednesday by attorneys for former Trump campaign attorney Kenneth Chesebro seeking a speedy trial in the case. Now, if approved by Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee, who is overseeing the case, Willis would have to begin presenting her case against all 19 before November 3rd, the last day of the next court term in Fulton County. And so she's ready. That's what's really impressive to me about Fani Willis, right? She's coming in strong, and she's like, oh, you want a speedy trial? I'm ready. In fact, they ensured that they had all of their ducks in a row in case this situation arose, and the situation has arose. Like, they have decided, okay, if they want a speedy trial, we're willing to go along with this. However, notably, the Trump legal team does not want a speedy trial.
No, they do not.
So why is that, Cenk?
So look, the prosecutors are also a little concerned because they want it to be in March, and gives them 4 more months to prepare. But they say we can go. Okay, I want the speediest trial possible as long as it's fair to everyone involved. And Trump wants it to be as late as possible. Remember, he tried to move some of his trials to 2026. That's 3 years from now, okay? So he doesn't, the very last thing he wants is a speedy trial. Because the quicker they go, the quicker the American people will know, is he guilty, not guilty? They'll get to see some of the witnesses. They'll see Republican after Republican testifying against him. They'll see the evidence against him. And then if he's convicted before the voting starts, look, I know a lot of Republicans say, and then we saw it on the debate stage last night, 6 out of the 8 schmucks that were there said they would back him as a presidential candidate even if he got convicted, if he won the primary. But at some point, this is gonna do damage because the Republican voters are gonna wake up and go, we're walking into a definite loss here, like a nearly guaranteed loss. Are we sure we wanna do that? So we'll see which way they go about it. But to me, Jim Jordan, which we'll get to in a second, does make one good point, which is so rare, it's literally, I've never seen it before, but we're the fairest show in America, so I'll give him this. One of the things that he wants to explore in the hearing is, why did it take 2.5 years, whether it's Fani Willis or the Justice Department, et cetera, why did it take all of them 2.5 years? And I think that's outrageous. I think that is a real problem. And I'm not even positive that it's not political. I'm not at all positive of that.
I mean, look, obviously it's impossible to be positive, but if I had to make a bet, yeah, definitely the timing of it is political, in my opinion. Again, opinion. I don't have like the evidence to show you that, but there was no reason why it needed to take this long to indict Trump.
Yeah, and so the original, what Fani Willis is asking for is for the trial to start right before the voting begins, like a day before Super Tuesday, and
Come on,
it's too much. It's
yeah,
too
I agree
much.
with that.
I hope Cheesebro wins because it should be before that. It shouldn't be after that. It shouldn't be then. It should be before.
I totally agree with you on that. So he's going to report to the jail today and get booked. Donald Trump will. Many of his co-conspirators have already been booked, and we've showed some of those mugshots to you. And we will update you as soon as he does officially get booked, and very likely has his mugshot taken as well. I do want to move on now to the Jim Jordan angle here, because it's a really fascinating, I think it's a fascinating development in a really bad way, but also in some cases, as you mentioned, Cenk, in a legitimate way as well. So the Republican House Judiciary Committee has officially had it with Fani Willis, and they want to now investigate her as the Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney who has brought indictments against Donald Trump and 18 of his co-conspirators, which of course include his campaign lawyers and his closest allies. Now, the House Judiciary Committee Chair, Jim Jordan, launched an investigation into the so-called motivations behind her indictments against Trump and his 18 co-defendants. And we have a letter that he sent to the Fulton County District Attorney. We'll give you some excerpts on what it says. According to Mediaite, Jordan sent a letter to Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis questioning the timing of the prosecution on RICO charges of election tampering, stating it was noteworthy that Willis launched a new campaign fundraising website that highlighted her investigation into Trump just days before the indictments were issued by a Fulton County grand jury. I looked into this, and she launched that fundraising website about 4 days before the indictments were announced. So he has questions, along with others in the Judiciary Committee, about the timing of the fundraising website and also the timing of the indictments as well as it pertains to the 2024 presidential election.
Yeah, so look, 98% of Republican congressional hearings are nonsense, and they're meant to just be political theater. They almost never have any evidence at all. But here there are a couple of legitimate questions. One is definitely about the timing of the trial, starting right before Super Tuesday. Why did they wait 2.5 years? Yes, those are legitimate questions. I know it's a giant rarity for Republicans, but it does happen sometimes, and you have to keep an open mind, and you have to look at the actual facts and not just dismiss it out of hand. Now, having said that, the rest of it, like, okay, did she coordinate with federal prosecutors? So what if she did?
Yeah,
why is that's not a crime? There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why that's like they say it like as if like, oh, can you imagine if she? Yeah. Well, why wouldn't prosecutors coordinate? I don't get it.
Well, speaking of political maneuvering, this is also partly or majorly political on their behalf as well, right?
For Jim Jordan?
For Jim Jordan, of course. Yeah, so right. I say that because, look, there's this really interesting psychological trick that's taking place in multiple different contexts. And it involves someone engaging in something that is not criminal, that isn't even problematic or questionable, but the opposing party will make it appear as though, or talk about it with framing and a tone that makes it seem like there's some illegality there. And in this case, Jordan is accusing her of coordinating with special counsel Jack Smith on this indictment against Donald Trump. There's nothing, if she were doing that, there's literally nothing wrong. I specifically looked into it because I'm like, I don't know, maybe there's some sort of legal rule that I'm not privy to. I'm not a lawyer, didn't go to Columbia. Like, please. But it turns out that no, actually, a lot of legal experts were concerned back in April when Fani Willis said in the context of an interview that no, she's not coordinating with Jack Smith. I want to give you her exact quote. So this was an interview in April with WABE. She said, I don't know what Jack Smith is doing. Jack Smith doesn't know what I'm doing. In all honesty, if Jack Smith was standing next to me, I'm not sure I would know who he was. My guess is he probably can't pronounce my name correctly. But the legal experts were alarmed at that statement because they feel that the two absolutely should be coordinating, considering the similarity of the charges, right?
Yeah, look, I don't know why they wouldn't be, and I'll tell you, you can tell one way that I think that they are not coordinating. It's that Jack Smith didn't charge Mark Meadows with anything, and based on what we already know, my guess is that Mark Meadows is working with Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, on the federal case. And that's why he was like, well, do I really have to come into Georgia? Do I really have to take a mugshot like the rest of them? And Fani Willis is like, yeah, why not? Because I don't think she has any idea that he's a cooperating witness for Jack Smith, if I'm right, okay, if I'm right. But so if that's the case, well, then they're definitely not coordinating, but who cares if they are? There's nothing wrong with coordinating. Like Republicans just say things like, as if they're like, did you know that Hunter Biden called Joe Biden the big guy? Oh, okay.
No, but it is amazing. The human mind is an incredible thing, right? Because if you just say something, if you make a comment about something innocuous, but you say it in a certain tone, people will be like, oh.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's no criminality in that at all.
Like here's another one that they did. Joe Biden would call Hunter Biden every day. And you're telling me they weren't coordinating. Yeah, their father and son, and Hunter was on crack.
But
so Joe kept calling him to say, please get off crack. And like, are you okay, son? They make it sound so nefarious, right? Just in how they state it. But by the way, we're super fair. Fani Willis, for example, the setting up the fundraising site 4 days before the indictment, was that related? Of course it's related, of course. She knows her name's gonna be in the press 1,000 times and is a big fighter against Trump. And is she gonna raise a lot of money for campaigns based on that? Of course she is.
And the question is, I mean, you might think that is, I don't know the right word. You might not like that. You might think that looks shady or whatever, but this is what politicians do.
Yeah, 100%.
This is all they do.
So I hate it, but I'm not hating the player, I'm hating the game.
Yeah, totally.
Right, so like they all do for this greasy fundraising, and they all need to do it because of the insane system that we have. By the way, you know the other guy who made a lot of money fundraising off the trial is Donald Trump. So Republicans, are you as fair as we are? I don't like either one of them fundraising off of this stuff. But my guess is you're going to say, I can't believe Fani Willis is doing it. It's just 4 days before Trump, of course, here's a couple $100 million.
In fact, Trump has not spent any of his personal money for his legal defense at all. It's all through the donations he's received from his supporters. So just something to keep in mind as this, war continues with both sides accusing each other of things. And in this case, with the Republican Party accusing, Fani Willis of engaging in something that, quite honestly, is pretty indicative of what you'll see in our political system. Now, I want to give you some other excerpts from the letter that was sent to Fani Willis from the House Judiciary Committee. So in addition to accusing Willis of being politically motivated, Jordan also complained about the fact that she required mugshots for those who were indicted, which didn't happen in his previous 3 indictments, in Trump's previous 3 indictments, of course. He wrote, quote, "You did not bring charges until 2.5 years later, at a time when the campaign for the Republican presidential nomination is in full swing. Moreover, you have requested that the trial in this matter begin on March 4th, 2024, the day before Super Tuesday and 8 days before the Georgia presidential primary." So we discussed that. I think there's a legitimate grievance there for sure. Jordan claimed the indictment appears to be an attempt to use state criminal law to regulate the conduct of federal officers acting in their official capacities, and questioned whether and how your office coordinated with DOJ Special Counsel Jack Smith during the course of this investigation. So those were the highlights of the letter. But look, what I'm concerned about is that now things have devolved even further, right? Because while I do think it's important to hold Trump accountable and his co-conspirators accountable for attempting to undermine our democratic process and essentially steal an election, at the same time, now we have these like phony investigations being launched against a prosecutor who's literally doing her job, right?
Yeah, well, look, that's the much larger issue, which is the Republicans breaking down law and order. And it's super ironic because my whole life, the Republican Party has said that they're for law and order. But now that their leader is being held accountable, they do not like it at all. And it's one thing to say, hey, I don't like it. I don't want you to prosecute this guy. I think it's political. Okay, I don't agree, and they have overwhelming evidence, and you'll see it in trial. But okay, I at least understand that. It's another thing to say, no, let's now defund the FBI altogether, like disband it, because if you disband the FBI, then they could break even more laws. And by the way, theoretically, the Republicans should be thinking, well, if we defund the FBI, couldn't Biden and the Democrats get away with more stuff? We don't want that, right? But they're not thinking that because they know that Biden's not trying to get away with more stuff, and Democrats are generally, the politicians have tons of problems, right? And there's systemic corruption in the campaign donations, et cetera. But Democrats generally follow the law because they're very establishment, they're very pro status quo. They don't have a reason to break the law. They're already sitting pretty in a lot of ways, right? But the Republicans keep breaking the law over and over and over again at the political level, right? Or their politicians are breaking actual criminal statutes. So they're like, get rid of the cops, get rid of the cops. Cops, yes, good when it's people that we don't like, minorities, whoever else it might be. Cops good when I want to be protected in the suburbs. But when cops are going after our guys, I don't want to just protect my guy. I want to get rid of the cops completely. And by the way, that is not unprecedented for the Republicans. There's one other place where they have defunded the law enforcement, and that's Wall Street. So
the IRS,
for the finance guys, for the bankers, and IRS is another good example. IRS is enforcing the tax laws, and they're like defunded. They have defunded it so much. I talk about that in my book, Justice is Coming. You can get a link is down below in the description box. You could pre-order now at trt.com/justice. But anyway, I prove the case. I show you exactly, and what was the first thing Kevin McCarthy promised as soon as they won the House? Defund the IRS, right? And they always want to defund all the regulatory agencies that hold Wall Street accountable because they don't want the rich and the powerful to be held to account. They only want you held to account. And it's because it's not about law and order, it's about power.
All right, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, a pretty big story involving someone who started a rebellion against Vladimir Putin and the Russian military, Yevgeny Prigozhin. He's now dead, and we'll tell you how he died when we return.
Get myself in a little trouble.
That's what I do.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. I love our members because on our website, Wang John wrote in, I'm guessing Bart's in a good mood.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't know, Bart does audio for us, and it certainly did sound like he was in a good mood.
Oh, here's why I'm in a good mood, guys. The mug shots. The mugshot of Trump. Oh, it's gonna be beautiful.
I can't wait for the mugshot. Hopefully we'll have that later for you in this show. And Seth Michael Draginski said, justice is coming to my place, because I pre-ordered it. I appreciate you, brother. TYT.com/justice to do likewise. Bookshop, by the way, among the different links, I think helps indie bookstores, Barnes & Noble's good, a lot of different places to buy the book. We appreciate all of you guys. Casper.
All right, we've got a big development in Moscow.
Video showing the plane registered to that mercenary leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, falling to earth from 28,000 feet. Behind it, a trail of smoke. Russian state TV reporting tonight that he was on board and he was killed in the crash. The plane plummeting, erupting into a fireball. 10 people in all on board. No one survived this.
That's right, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who was the leader of the Wagner mercenary group that staged a short-lived mutiny against the Russian military's top brass back in June, was one of the passengers on that plane that crashed outside of Moscow just Wednesday of this week. Now, all 10 people, as you heard, on board have died as a result of that plane crash. And we're getting some more detail into what intelligence officials here in the United States think happened here. But if you are suspicious of Vladimir Putin's potential role in this, you should be.
Of course.
Now, the plane that listed Prigozhin as a passenger left Moscow's airport on Wednesday at about 6 p.m. local time, and it was bound for St. Petersburg, to which I ask, what was he doing in Russia after staging a rebellion against Putin and his military? Like,
yeah,
insane, especially considering what we know about Vladimir Putin and the way that he has treated his political opponents, journalists who have not been so celebratory in their coverage of him. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
no,
wow.
mental. Look, he was definitely overconfident. There's no question about it. And I remember thinking, like, this guy's strolling around way too much. And I thought, does he know something? I don't know. One, he's the leader of a mercenary army, and one that's brutal and awful and has robbed Africa blind, let alone what he did in Ukraine, and has made apparently billions in post-Soviet Russia through basically, mob-like activities, etc. So I'm like, maybe he's in charge. I don't know. Maybe he's stronger than Putin. Maybe he's got guys inside the Russian military, because this doesn't make sense. He's flaunting himself, walking around like he doesn't have a care in the world. Well, it turns out, no, simpler explanation, overconfident.
So the 7 passengers that were listed included Prigozhin and also some of his lieutenants, including Wagner's top commander, Dmitry Utkin. It also listed 3 crew members in addition to the 7. Now, earlier today, American and other Western officials said an explosion on the plane likely brought down the aircraft on Wednesday, killing all passengers aboard. Based on preliminary intelligence reports, a definitive conclusion had not been reached at that point, but an explosion is the leading theory of what caused the plane to crash. And then later today, the explosion was confirmed by a US intelligence official who spoke to the press. They claim that the West believes that this was an intentional explosion for, I think, obvious reasons, right?
We don't have to discuss that.
I know.
Of course it was intentional, and of course Putin shot it out of the sky. I mean, was there another leader who has Stinger missiles firing at a plane inside Russia?
Okay, wait, hold on though, because there's a disagreement, right? Because US officials aren't saying that a missile shot it down. US officials are actually pouring cold water on that. They actually disagree with that theory. But actually, I want to go to, so American satellite intelligence did not detect a missile launch, and there is no other evidence of a surface to air weapon that took out the plane. But to your point, Cenk, there have been some other individuals, including former members of the United States military, who have said that they believe, based on what they saw in the wreckage, that it was shot down by a missile. I don't know what the truth is. This is above my pay grade, but nonetheless, let's take a look at the video.
Video circulating online from the crash site showing what appears to be puncture marks in the wreckage. Experts saying this points to the likelihood of a missile strike, not a bomb blast.
If it had been a bomb on board, we would have seen deformation that would have been expanding out of the aircraft. Right now, we're seeing the puncture holes that are a signature of a surface-to-air or an air-to-air missile impacting that aircraft.
So the US intelligence community apparently disagrees with that. The explosion could have been caused by a bomb or other device planted on the aircraft, though there have been some other theories floating around, including, I've never heard this phrase before in this context, but adulterated fuel, which sounds like it could be fun, but it's not. So that's also being explored. So after months of increasingly caustic criticism of the Russian military leadership's campaign in Ukraine, Prigozhin led a short-lived revolt against the top brass in June. The brief mutiny, the most dramatic and public challenge to Putin's rule in decades, was diffused. A deal was announced by the Kremlin to end hostilities, and Wagner forces were allowed to either sign up with the Russian military or move to Belarus, a close Russian ally. And I do want to note that Vladimir Putin has issued his condolences, and I want to give you a sense of what kind of condolences he's into, especially when it comes to someone who tried to lead a rebellion against him. He said, quote, "This was a person with a complicated fate. He made some serious mistakes in life, but he also achieved necessary results." Jesus.
Heartwarming. He seems really broken up about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and he did what I think were little jabs about how Prigozhin had some questionable activities in Africa. I don't know that he meant it as questionable, because they were all profiting off of all the things that this mercenary army was doing. But there's one giant question still left. By the way, look, whether it was an internal bomb or a missile that shot it down or anything else, it doesn't matter. It happened inside Russia, from Moscow to St. Petersburg. That was the flight. The Germans didn't do it, the Taiwanese didn't do it. It was obviously the Russian military that did it. If it wasn't the Russian military, then we got a bigger problem, because there's a foreign army inside Russia, and that could be a disaster. Now, of course it was, of course. One of my favorite things was in one of the articles, they're like, yet Putin was celebrating the Soviet army's victory over Nazi Germany hundreds of miles away in a different town. Yeah, I didn't think he actually shot the Stinger missile himself.
No, it's hilarious.
Okay, like why does that matter? Okay.
I love how they're trying to like drum up an alibi for Putin.
It's totally.
Yeah.
And there's another great line from Blinken, which is shocking. But anyway, although Putin is the only guy who might think about it and be like, maybe I get on horseback, take shirt off, fire it myself.
Totally.
Okay, I jump in it. Anyways, Anthony Blinken said NATO has an open door policy and Russia has an open windows policy. So I'd be careful if I was Prigozhin.
That is a good quote.
Okay, yes, and he said that earlier, and unfortunately he was proven right. Now, to maybe the most relevant part of the story, which is, yes, but how is the Wagner group going to respond? So there's a couple of different possibilities here. So you've got not only Prigozhin, but a couple of his top lieutenants are dead now in that plane crash. So is there a strong leader still left in that mercenary group? Here's 4 possibilities. One, they just melt away because they're like, we're not, Putin ain't nothing to mess with.
That would be ideal.
Yeah. Number 2 is they decide, screw it, let's go back into the Russian military and do our damage there.
That's not ideal.
Not ideal. They're again, don't have any sympathy for Prigozhin.
Zero.
These guys were the worst of them. And just because he turned on Putin doesn't make him a good guy at all, or anybody in the Wagner group. 3 is they just go, screw all of this. Let's just go back to being mercenaries. Let's go back to Africa and keep the robbery going and make tons of money and don't get involved in Ukraine, Russia, or anything else along those lines. The 4th possibility is the most interesting and dangerous one, which is they're like, okay, well, now it's our turn. And a video was released today with masked men saying they're in the Wagner group saying, expect us. So that might be next.
Well, we'll see how it all plays out. But clearly Putin had held a grudge against Prigozhin. He considered it a massive betrayal. So if the members of the Wagner group are directing their ire and potential violence toward Putin, it's definitely based on his behavior in the past and the statements he's put out in regard to Prigozhin following the rebellion. So
one last thing.
Yeah.
As I read that statement from what remains of the Wagner group, which is, by the way, the great majority of them, they just lost 3 leaders. Everyone else remains. So the army's still there. We just don't know if they have a strong leader left and a smart leader left. But I thought, well, maybe that's why Prigozhin was overconfident, because he had a backup plan and thought Putin's not going to do it, because if he does it, we're going to counterstrike in a way that puts him in actual danger. And so, but we don't know. I have no idea what the capabilities of the Wagner group is inside Russia. But I will say, if you think this is over and that you're sure that they're not going to strike back, I think you're definitely wrong. There's certainly a percentage chance that they're going to strike back, and then it's going to be an incredible mess inside Russia.
When we come back from the break, we're going to switch gears and do a little more coverage than we've already done on the first GOP primary debate, which took place last night. Fox News is really trying hard to make Nikki Haley happen. It ain't going to happen. If you ask me, I'll tell you why when we return.
Apparently we've got a theme in the music today. All right, Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also Jason Otani just joined by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube, thereby making him an American hero. You can join him at tyt.com/join. And Bruce Salazar gifted another 5 Young Turks membership. And Bruce is one of the all-time American heroes. We appreciate you, brother. Casper, what's next?
All right, the aftermath of the first Republican primary debate, which took place last night, we should get into how the press has reacted to it, including who Fox News would like to prop up following that debate.
Nikki Haley, who we did a kind of an informal survey here in the studio, and I talked to some of my friends last night, and they said that they felt that she ran away with the show.
I thought Nikki Haley just knocked it out of the park with the debt, blaming Republicans and Donald Trump for the debt.
Wow, that was a surprising reaction from Ainsley. I thought she would want to defend Donald Trump. That's what she's certainly done in her career so far. But nonetheless, clearly the fine folks over at Fox and Friends absolutely believe that Nikki Haley nailed it last night during the first GOP primary debate. Is she gonna happen? I don't think she's gonna happen. We watched the exact same debate, and I don't know, Cenk. I felt like she was very forgettable in that whole exchange, interaction.
So I forget if we predicted it at the end of the coverage or not, or if I just tweeted about it a couple of times, but I was like, oh, I know who they're gonna say won, Nikki Haley. Why? Because she was the most establishment candidate.
She certainly was, yeah.
They always love the most establishment candidate. And by the way, here we go again, whenever it's, the president is going to affect economic issues massively. So all of a sudden, Fox News and MSNBC this morning saying, Nikki Haley, way to go, Nikki Haley. Let's go. Scarborough and Fox and Friends both agree it should definitely be Nikki Haley. Why? Because she's the most corporate candidate there is. And we watched it last night. And so she's out there screaming, more defense spending, more money to Israel, more money to all my donors.
By the way, as she calls for more money in defense spending, loosening up the purse strings when it comes to potentially her donors, Just today, she put out a statement about how she does not believe that people should be retiring at 65 because 65 is just too young to retire.
Oh, yeah, 100%. By the way, Pence's policies are just as bad as Nikki Haley's on the economic issues.
Yeah.
They're always talking about cutting Social Security, Medicare, making you work longer. They hate the average guy. That's why it was so telling when Ducey's like, we polled the studio here and everybody in corporate media agreed. And then I asked my friends in the cocktail circuit and they all agreed. The rich love Nikki Haley. And we watched the debate and we don't like him at all. But we thought Vivek Ramaswamy probably won.
So look, we're gonna hear from Republican voters and who they thought won in just a bit. And honestly, like, who cares what we think, right? I mean, sure, we'll do our analysis, but at the end of the day, what matters is the perception or perspective of the actual Republican voters who are gonna make the decision in the primaries. But I do wanna go to that MSNBC video that you were alluding to, Cenk, because it's worth watching. Let's take a look.
Some kind of debate last night. But Nikki Haley had a couple of moments. She really did.
I think Nikki Haley had the best debate of the night in terms of the expectations game. That's often how debates are judged. She came in, she'd been having trouble differentiating herself. She was strong on foreign policy. She was somebody who bridged the foreign policy of the Republican Party. And she went hard after Vivek on experience. And it really left.
She has it.
She's got it.
Nikki Haley had a great night. I think as she wrote this, I thought she stood out among the group.
And I gotta say, corporate media and establishment Republican politicians are so thirsty, for an ordinary, bland, traditional conservative Republican, right? The pre-Trump days, that's what they're looking for.
Traditional corporate Republican.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what they're desperate for sure. Look, guys, I say it on the show all the time. The hardest thing in the world is to escape your own perspective. So there's two reasons why all these anchors are all saying the same thing. And if you noticed in that the videos we just showed you, that was Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN. All of the anchors and all of the pundits agreed Nikki Haley. Because one is they have a financial incentive to have a corporate Democrat and a corporate Republican run against each other. They're all gonna spend tons of money on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. They're gonna get that money from corporate donors. It's this corruption machine that feeds, most of all, corporate media, those cable channels, right? So they have a financial incentive to go in that direction. But more than that, on a personal level, it's just that they can't escape their own perspective. They think everybody thinks the status quo is great. We just want to get back to the status quo. We just want to get back to the establishment being in charge. They don't think of it in those terms, but that's what their gut leads them to. That's why they all agree. It's groupthink, right? Meanwhile, we try to analyze the debate in terms of not what we want, but what do Republican voters like? Because this is the thing that drives me most crazy about pundits on television. They're always, with no data, no facts, nothing to back them up, they substitute their opinion for the opinion of the American people.
I see that happening a lot. And look, sometimes it's difficult to parse out the two and put your own personal preferences aside and put yourself in the mind of voters and what voters very likely are gonna want. So what's really interesting is that CNN spoke to a group of Republican Iowa voters after the debate. Why don't we take a look at that video and see if the corporate press's predictions are at all aligned with the actual voters?
Who do you think won the debate? I'm gonna do it in alphabetical order to be fair. Anyone think Doug Burgum did the best? That's 0. Anyone think Chris Christie did the best? He certainly got most of the airtime. A lot of the airtime, not most of the airtime. How about Ron DeSantis? How many of you think Ron DeSantis did the best? That's 2 people. How about Nikki Haley? 1, 2, 3, 4 people. Asa Hutchinson? Mike Pence? 0. Vivek Ramaswamy? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Tim Scott? Okay, so this panel here thinks Ramaswamy won the debate. Tell me why you think he won the debate.
I was reminded of the time when Vivek was talking about the national identity situation, and I know Pence brought up that that wasn't really an issue, but I think it was a generational problem because Vivek understands that young folks don't really understand that people my age don't really love America, and if you don't love it, you can't protect it. And I think if we fix that problem, then people will, as a natural byproduct, want to protect America and what it stands for.
Look, I gotta say, I've had a little bit of difficulty in expressing this on the show because I don't want people to think I'm going in the direction of jingoism or the like annoying and oftentimes fake patriotism you see among some. But I think that point that Vivek makes is a legitimate one about loving the country. I mean, look, understanding that this country has flaws and we should work to improve and we should always look to improve, right? But I do feel like there's this like growing disdain for the country that's not healthy, and I'm worried about that.
No, I'll go further. I love America. I'm not shy about it. I'm not going to back away from that at all. I don't care what anybody says. And does that mean that I think America is flawless? Of course not. That's ridiculous. There's 1,000 things to improve. And part of the reason I love America is because we're supposed to improve them. And they've given us a pathway to improve them. We haven't in a long time, but I would love to. And my parents and my family came here because we love this country. So ideals. We didn't come because like, oh, we would love to be among white people or black people or whatever. We came for the idea of America. And the idea is land of opportunity, hope, and freedom, right? So now you could say, oh, well, first of all, if you're saying that sounds like Republican points, well, that's shame on the Democrats. No, freedom is not a Republican talking point. It's something we should all cherish, and we should hold the Republicans accountable when they don't actually mean it and go against that idea all the time. And equality of opportunity is not equality of opportunity for everyone who's already rich. It's equality of opportunity for all of us, That's why America's awesome. And so did it have problems in its founding? Of course it did, guys. Why do we live in these extremes where the right wing's like, no, America's never done anything wrong, and everything they did is great, and don't teach them things that were bad, right? And then some on the left are like, no, we hate America, it's the worst. The only reason it was formed was to do slavery, and everybody's evil. It's like, come on, guys, come on. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I love you, brothers and sisters, but that's ridiculous.
So I've been reading because I want to really fully understand critical race theory. I want to read the scholars and what the actual thesis is, as opposed to the summaries of the thesis. And so Derek Bell is one of the prominent scholars in critical race theory, and really the center of the thesis is that racism is permanent in America. Right, that it is. There's no way to root it out. There's no way to progress. And I disagree with that.
No, of course it's wrong. Sorry, look, I love that he's putting it forward and we're having discussions about it, and it's a graduate level class.
Right.
And if you can't handle that in graduate school, then you shouldn't be in graduate school. It's not taught in any of the high schools. Republicans are totally lying about it, let alone elementary or junior high. It's ridiculous, right? To say that when it isn't true. But do I agree with him on that? No, I don't agree with him on that. And I have 1,000 reasons why, but my personal experience shows that too. When my dad came to the country, it was so open and welcoming to a Muslim immigrant. And then later, as I grew up, unfortunately, it became more closed to Muslim immigrants. And then Trump famously said, we should ban all Muslim immigrants until we figure out what the hell is going on. So when I love America, it's not because, I think it's great and it's wonderful that Trump said that. Of course not, right? But look at the difference in the different time periods. Mm-hmm. It goes to show you, no, change is definitely possible. It can get better, it can get worse, and the culture is malleable. To say that it cannot change, and it cannot change for the positive, is A, completely wrong in my opinion, and B, it's depressing to your own side. It says don't bother trying for change. Don't bother trying to make things better.
That's exactly right.
Lose all hope. And I don't agree. I'm never gonna agree to that, okay? So, but back to Vivek and Pence and all these guys. Look, Pence made the argument when Vivek and Pence fought in the debate that everything is good now. Why? Because he's in favor of the status quo. And Vivek said, no, the country's going in the wrong direction. And I knew Vivek was gonna win that argument because I've seen the polling. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. 65% of the country, not 65% of Republicans, 65% of the whole country says we're going in the wrong direction. And here's a bunch of corporate hacks that get out there and go, rah, rah, we're going in a great direction, right? No, that's silly. And they say that because they're in great shape and their donors are in great shape. And the guys in the media, they're all, almost everyone you saw on screen there are multimillionaires. So they're like, what do you mean? Pence and Nikki Haley are so right, we're in great shape. Meanwhile, the Republican voters, we told you. You asked them and they go, no, country's not going in good shape, but we wanted to, and we believe in America, so Vivek hit them on both of those things. That's why we thought he was gonna win.
So I wanna go to one other, so you watched that focus group, right? That's, I don't know, it was like a dozen people. Let's look at an actual poll and see how Republican voters felt after the primary debate. This was actually shocking. So this is a poll done by the Washington Post, and they report that Ron DeSantis was the one that the likely Republican voters believe won that debate. I just find that super shocking. However, Vivek Ramaswamy is very close to him at 26%. And remember, Vivek Ramaswamy just weeks ago was being referred to as a long shot candidate. You know, what is he really running for? Is he trying to get a cabinet position? Is he hoping that, if Trump ends up going to prison and drops out of the race, that maybe he'll be the front runner? Who knows what the motivations are, but I'll say this. Regardless of what you feel about his policies, and there are many of his proposals that I think are goofy and ridiculous, including increasing the voting age to 25 years old and forcing people to take a civics test before being able to vote.
Yeah, why don't you just do a poll tax while you're at it?
I mean, insane. I don't agree with any of that stuff, right? However, just judging by his performance on that stage, speaking of optics, right? He came out across as strong, confident, charismatic. That confidence really does go a long way. He did have some goofy moments though, including the debate portion about Ukraine. And that was when Chris Christie and Nikki Haley almost like tag teamed in crushing him.
Yeah.
And he looked like a lost child briefly. That was the weakest moment in the debate for him. But even so, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at the entirety of the debate, I do think that he came out on top.
So I have an explanation why the primary voters are a little bit different than the focus group that you just saw. Because primary voters are much older than the average population. Whereas the focus group you saw on television was mixed age and a lot of young people in there. And number two, the primary voters don't have nearly as much information and they go so much more on name recognition. And DeSantis has much larger name recognition and has had a lot of positive publicity. And Vivek is so young, so there's a lot of reasons why DeSantis beat him a little bit with the primary voters, but you see how strong a guy who no one had ever heard of a couple of months ago came in because he actually had a debate strategy to appeal to Republican voters instead of television pundits. And I'm gonna say one more thing. Nikki Haley did better than I expected among those primary voters in that poll. She didn't do that great, but better than I expected. So, so they're seeing something positive there. So give her credit for that. And Chris Christie's still not doing well, but I'm telling you, let's see what happens, but I'm still saying that Chris Christie's gonna be one of the last ones left because Republican voters respect strength. Let's see what happens.
And by the way, in regard to that Washington Post poll, they polled the voters both before and after the debate. So the numbers that I shared with you were their responses after the debate. But in regard to the poll that happened prior to the debate, here's what they found. Haley showed the most improvement when it came to the share of Republicans who say they would consider voting for her. Pre-debate, 29% of GOP primary voters who watched the debate said they were considering voting for her, and that increased to 46% after the debate.
Okay, so then look, by the way, that means the answer is somewhere between us and cable news because they thought, she nailed it. We thought she was just mediocre, but the Republican primary voters thought pretty good. Vivek was better according to them. We were right about that. And by the way, everyone on cable news thought Vivek did terrible. So they were 100% wrong about that. They're like, He didn't even want to support more defense spending. What a child.
They don't really seem to like him.
No, they hate him.
Yeah, it's
you know
pretty
why?
obvious
As
to me.
what I've been saying all along.
That's going to help him, by the way.
Of course it's going to help him. Yeah. If you're a Republican candidate, you want the press to hate you. If you're a Democratic candidate, you don't want that, because unfortunately, way too many Democratic primary voters still listen to the jackasses on MSNBC and CNN. But for Republicans, that's a badge of honor, right? And the reason the cable guys don't like him is because he's an outsider. They despise all outsiders.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, an update on Trump's bond situation. And we'll also talk a little bit about how Chris Christie did not take kindly to Ramaswamy referring to the other politicians, including Chris Christie himself, as being bought and paid for. So I can't wait to talk about that and give you the details. Come right back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.